What's going on, Alabama fans? Welcome to Alabama Recruiting on AL.com. My name is Patrick Greenfield. I'm a sports producer for AL.com. And today I'm hanging out with Nick Alvarez, who you guys probably know from the past 2 weeks, maybe some of his Alabama coverage as he fills in for Mike Rodak. And we're talking some running backs today. So how are you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great, like Alabama fans should feel about these two running backs we're about to talk about.
Absolutely. And it'll be interesting, especially after watching the Texas game and kind of what's happened to Alabama's running back room over the past 2 years. It'll be very interesting to see these guys come into the fold. So anything you want to say about these guys right now, or do you just want to hop into Richard Young?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of build off your last point there. Everyone's seeing Jahmyr Gibbs kind of be used as a pass catcher this year. He's a transfer player. Alabama's, five-star running back in 2022, Emmanuel Henderson from Geneva County. He's listed as a receiver on the roster. And I think when you kind of look at these two kids, and we look at these two kids coming in, Justice Haynes and Richard Young, you're not going to see them out wide by design. Like they are running backs. They are one cut. They are workhorses that kind of maybe fit the more traditional sense, if you want to use that term, for what these running backs can do.
Awesome. So we're going to go into Richard Young, and I got a little graphic set up right here. Why don't you tell us about him? He's obviously the number 2 ranked overall in the nation, 5-star. He picked Bama over Notre Dame, Oregon, and Georgia, of course. So why don't you fill us in on him?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you talk about Richard Young, everyone who's spent some time with him, whether a trainer, head coach, they just kind of see, well, the sky's the limit for him. I interned with the Fort Myers News Press a couple years ago when he, I believe, was a freshman or a sophomore. And even then, people were saying, okay, get ready for this kid. His coach, James Chaney, down at Lehigh Acres, thinks he's a future Hall of Famer. Which you can take that with you will.
Oh, my God. Yeah, that's a bit much, right?
A bit much, right? But when you look at the stats, I mean, he's averaged 9 yards a touch through his first 3 years in high school. And also monitoring carries. Aside from last week where he had 33 carries in a big game with 2 touchdowns, he's someone who is making the absolute most of his opportunities. And also, even though it's kind of crazy to think about this in a high school standpoint, he's also taking care of himself and the way he kind of works his body, because he is, he has speed, but he's going to be an inside the tackles guy. He's going to be one cut and go. He's not going to be afraid to lower his shoulder. So to see him kind of already managing his body is kind of a good sign.
So I have a, highlight from ESPN that they were on TV last week. This is his team, Lehigh, Florida. And as you can see, speed plus power. He looks like an NFL running back right there.
No, it's absolutely elite. I mean, I think there's a reason why he's visited Florida the past few weeks to visit his friends. He said he's still 100% committed to the Tide, but the fact that he's even gone to Florida has had people talking, because he's just that type of talent where people are going to kind of look at him and be, okay, where's he going? We need him. We want to get him on campus. So it's not a surprise that, if you're still recruiting him, probably still calling him, and it'll probably be a discussion of, can Bama lock him down? I think they will by the time December comes around.
So I did see Richard Young sent a tweet out on Saturday. He was at the Florida-Kentucky game, and he was trying to recruit. He was not there because of Florida. He's trying to recruit one of his high school teammates or something. And, just because these kids have these official visits, sometimes you're going to take advantage of that. Go to a big game, he obviously wasn't able to make it out to Texas. But he said he was locked in on Bama. So this is a very interesting prospect. More so to have that power runner that Bama kind of has lacked. Najee didn't really do that. Brian Robinson a little bit. He was catching out of the backfield as well, though. So anything else you want to add about Richard?
Yeah, I would say Richard had kind of used this to bridge into Justice a little bit. Both kind of are big names that Alabama has gotten so far. He's I think they're ranked within 15 of each other nationally. They're number 2 and 3 at the running back position. They're recruiting for Alabama. They are very much being open in the sense that, hey, we see a future there. We love the idea of playing together there, because that was a conversation when when Justice committed, oh, there's another running back there. Yeah, I'm all for it. They kind of love that competition and love that mindset. And you're probably going to hear them. They're going to be recruiting a lot more for Alabama.
That seems to be kind of a theme with a lot of this Alabama class, this 2023 class has been trying to get all their buddies. That didn't work for the kid who flipped from Notre Dame to Florida, but we'll switch over to Justice Haynes next. Sorry guys, a little nervous. I haven't been on camera in a year. We haven't talked like this in a little while. So happy everybody's watching. Just want to say this is Alabama Recruiting on AL.com, sponsored by Inline Lighting. If you got any questions, Nick Alvarez knows everything about Alabama recruiting. So please drop it in the chat. Next, we're going to go to Justice Haynes, plays at Buford. He just transferred there this year. He was playing at, I want to say, Trinity. And he's a pretty interesting prospect. He's an NFL pedigree. Why don't you give us a little bit of insight on Justice?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of right off the bat from a recruiting standpoint, I talked to John Garcia Jr. from SI, who said that Georgia not landing Justice Haynes is as big a miss as any in the country. You know, compared it with Peter Woods and Alabama, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago. He's that type of prospect where the fact that Alabama went, next door and they pulled him, that really says a lot. I was at the Buford Thompson game that opened the season a couple weeks back, or maybe a month ago now, and I just was amazed by, he had some good runs throughout the game, but he was kind of being contained a little bit. Right before the game kind of became a blowout in Buford's favor, he looked onto the field for a kick return that Buford had, recognized that, hey,
I think we got it right here. Here is
perfect.
The play.
Yeah. Right before that play, he looked on the field and recognized, wait, Tony Mitchell, the Alabama commit, we're going to talk about later, is not on the field. Peter Woods, the 5-star Clemson commit, is not on the field. Went to his special teams coach, said, hey, let me get out there. Went on, put his feet on the goal line, and then did what you're watching right now. He's just that type of kid, that type of player. He's also, like Richard, in a stable of running backs there at Buford. So he's not he's not getting run into the ground every single game. Through their first 3 games, or 3-0, he has 6 touchdowns and 400 yards, also averaging, I think, over 6 yards a touch. He's a little bit more elusive, a little more one cut. There was a highlight that went around of him kind of, getting Tony Mitchell in the dirt a little bit with a nice little move outside the second level. And
Tony Mitchell's no joke.
Yeah, right. Tony Mitchell loves to tackle in the box as kind of that star position, and Justice just did that. He's done that to a bunch of kids. So you talk to him, he is absolutely excited to kind of get a future in Alabama. And hey, what is this room going to look like? What is the kind of sky is the limit for him there?
Even more interesting is, his father, Vernon, played at Georgia, was a draft pick, won the 2005 Super Bowl with the Steelers, Seahawks. So, you get that pedigree, and you get, especially with Georgia fans and the Georgia program, where we're all thinking, is this the baby Alabama program? Is it going to, mature to not get these guys? It's pretty intriguing. I don't even question Saban's recruiting anymore.
Yeah,
People are like, does he still have it? Clearly he does. He has the number 1 team in the nation. But why can't Kirby get a player like this? It's not going to matter to Tide fans at all.
Yeah. Well, I would say that, there's probably some conversation oh, what's recruiting battles going to look like now that, Georgia finally beat Bama in the national championship game. Kirby has that ring. Well, that, we might still see that in the future, but for some of these 2023 guys, they've been recruited for 2-3 years. They've been building up these relationships for a long, long time. So for someone like Justice, it's a huge miss, but, I wouldn't put too much stock into the fact that, they won and couldn't get him, because, Alabama's probably been working him for years before they got that commitment.
Absolutely. Hey, switching over, let's give us the latest updates. If you want to talk about the Carver gentleman, or if you want to get into the Thompson gentleman.
Yeah, so really quick on Tony Mitchell. When he committed to Alabama, the other team that appeared to be in the mix throughout was Texas A&M. He, I think, took 1 trip out there. He's going there again, making a trip out to College Station. They didn't obviously have the best week, but they're still Texas A&M, and they do have recruiting prowess. I don't think it's necessarily something that Alabama fans need to be concerned about yet. But I do think it's a conversation, worth having, and a player worth monitoring as we go forward. And, similarly, I'm going to keep talking about Peter Woods, because he says he's locked into Clemson, and he is by all intents and purposes, but Alabama's still going to be making that call. There's still a need for some elite defensive linemen in the class to kind of bolster it. And, it wouldn't be hard, again, to make a stop, secure Tony, put in a conversation to Peter, who's been to campus dozens of times.
Sure. And with the Tony thing, like we said earlier, Miami's playing at Texas A&M, huge game. Hey, you guys are going to pay for a plane ticket. You guys are going to pay for a hotel room, meals. I'm going to go to a big game, and you're going to check it out. With the Peter Woods situation, they have such a tough defensive line. How could Saban get Woods to flip from Clemson and Dabo? What was it going to take?
I think it's just, there's a reason why the initial decision was so shocking, because everyone expected him to be going to Alabama, or to be locked into Alabama. And Dabo, to his credit, was able to pull him away. But I think you just need to kind of reinforce some of the things that you were selling him on. I think he spent his birthday at the Tide offices. This is someone that grew up an Alabama fan, has a lot of the connections to the school. I think he has some family members who play for the team. Or I think he has a cousin currently on the roster. And it's not hard to kind of just remind him a little bit. And then, you could use some of what we're seeing this year. That Alabama has a strong defensive line, but they're going to need some bodies a few years. Jaheim Otis, he's a freshman. He was kind of the talk of training camp or fall camp, and he's getting snaps. He's making plays as a freshman. So, a lot of people like to use the playing time argument with Alabama and why kids should, choose other routes. But hey, we see what Kobe Prentice from Calera. Like, if you're good enough, you're going to get on that field. And Alabama tends to attract the guys who think like that anyway.
Sure. And, he is a fan. He obviously grew up here, but don't discredit the fact that, guys want to make to the NFL. And Clemson's got one of the best defensive lines and has had for, half a decade right now. So switching back over to the Carver defensive line, do you want to give us an update on 5-star James Smith, 4-star Quay Russaw? Sorry, I don't want to butcher that name. And how Alabama's feeding into these two teammates?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think over the last month, I think the consensus has been that these two kids are going to be a package deal, that they will commit somewhere together. Now, your mileage on that can vary, and we'll see what comes around in December. But as of now, they've been going on recruiting trips together, ever since James transferred back in to Carver from IMG Academy, where he spent part of his junior season. And they are taking all these trips together as part of the Madhouse Fit training group, which has put, a bunch of players in the NFL, all of Alabama and Auburn alike, Mac Wilson, Marlon Davidson. So they're going on these trips together. They've been spotted at Georgia together, Auburn together, Alabama together. And teams, it's not a hard pitch for either. Both are kind of more reserved kids. They're going to be people that I don't think you're going to get him to come in and be like, hey, let's make you a superstar. They're going to be like, hey, where's the work going to be? They're kind of attracted to that, because not a lot of kids will go to 5 a.m. training sessions like they do down in Madhouse in Montgomery.
Sure. Is the package deal more just because they can travel together? That's an easier thing for them to go to all these schools, and they're also probably friends and teammates rather than two elite defensive linemen committing to the same school?
I mean, they are very good friends. They've been friends for a really long time, ever since they met through Madhouse, I believe, and really bonded there, and obviously bonded for the Carver Wolverines. And I'll take them at their word and say that, where they see their future is where they can play together, which, like we're seeing for Carver this year, that's really tough defense to kind of handle. And offense sometimes is, Carver has a couple packages where they'll snap the ball to one of them and let the other one lead block. As terrifying as that sounds.
It's like the refrigerator right there.
A little bit too.
There's another throwback NFL for you right there. So, well, Nick, anything else that you want to add about this class? Alabama hasn't really had a recent commit, but they obviously have no problem attracting talent.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're kind of looking at the calendar, in 5 days on September 19th, Jordan Renaud will commit. Yep. He is down between Alabama and Oklahoma. There's talks about, Cormani McClain, one of the best defensive backs in the country. Alabama's still in the mix with some of these guys, but, this is the recruiting cycle and how it works. There's going to be that rush in the preseason, and then there's going to be a little bit of a lull, and then, we'll slowly get back going again as we get towards signing day.
Absolutely. What we do know is Alabama is getting two stud running backs that are going to run right down the middle, and it's going to be pretty exciting to see how those get factored in with the new class. So thank you for everybody at AL.com. Nick Alvarez is Patrick Greenfield. AL.com recruiting, sponsored by Inland Lighting. Drop us your questions. Hit at Nick Alvarez on Twitter and let us know what you want him to write about. All right? And he'll blink, but I'll say goodbye for both of us. Thank you all for watching.
Bye, guys.